You probably have more technology, convenience, and information sitting right there in your pocket than any generation before you. I mean, we were promised that all these incredible advancements would free up our schedules, eliminate the daily grind, and give us, unparalleled leisure time. Yet, if you're like most people navigating the world today, especially if you're trying to build a career and a meaningful life, you constantly feel overwhelmed. You feel like you're perpetually running out of time, always just one step behind where you're supposed to be. So, what's actually going on here? Let's dive into this paradox.
Why does life feel increasingly busy, even when the machines were supposed to give us all our free time back? Well, in this explainer, we're going to look at a fundamental misdiagnosis of our modern era. See, the problem you're experiencing might not actually be poor time management. You really don't need another productivity app or some complex new calendar system. What you're feeling is actually the profound underlying anxiety of trying to do way too much with a finite human life. We are essentially trying to cram infinity into a microscopic window of existence. To understand exactly how we got here, we've got to look at our culture. In her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, author Brené Brown makes a really piercing observation about modern society. She points out that we've dangerously tied our self-worth directly to our net worth and to our daily productivity. And look at the massive implication of this. Because we've hardwired this connection in our brains, spending time on any purposeless activity feels terrifying. In fact, for a lot of us, just the mere thought of doing something completely unrelated to our to-do list triggers what literally feels like an impending anxiety attack. We've somehow convinced ourselves that resting, or just simply existing, is a tragic waste of precious time. And this anxiety is completely compounded by our material lives through a concept author Scott Galloway calls the hedonic treadmill. Notice how, as spending steadily goes up, the baseline of happiness just oscillates and stays completely flat. Galloway points out that every single new luxury we acquire quickly mutates into a baseline necessity. And then, that necessity spawns exhausting new obligations. You upgrade your lifestyle, and suddenly you've got to work twice as hard just to maintain it. It's basically an arms race where we're sprinting on a treadmill, moving faster and faster, but ultimately going absolutely nowhere. This endless sprinting traps us in what author Ryan Holiday, in his book Discipline is Destiny, calls the indiscipline of overwork. Notice that specific word, indiscipline. We usually think of working all the time or taking on a million projects as a sign of supreme, hardcore discipline. But Holiday argues the exact opposite. Constant overwork is a state where we actually lack the strength to just say no. We overextend ourselves, we push right through the glaring warning signs of burnout simply because we lack the discipline to protect our core priorities from the endless, noisy demands of the outside world. In the tech world, there's actually a specific term for this phenomenon, feature creep. It happens when a project manager lacks the discipline to protect the core concept of a product and just keeps jamming more and more features into it until it's a bloated, unusable mess. And guess what? We do the exact same thing with our lives. We literally cannot say no to requests. We try to please absolutely everyone, and we jam way too much into our days. And the cruel irony of feature creep? By trying to do absolutely everything, we practically guarantee that we achieve nothing of actual substance. So, here is the absolutely crucial point. How do we break out of this exhausting cycle? Well, in his book, The Laws of Human Nature, author Robert Greene argues that we need a drastic, almost jarring shift in our perspective. We have to stop looking at our day-to-day planners and honestly start looking at the cosmos. We need to confront the very uncomfortable reality of our own finitude. We are largely defined by our relationship to time. And right now, our relationship is just completely out of sync with reality. Think about the grand human experiment to build this new perspective. The Earth formed over billions of years. Human evolution took millions of years, with our ancestors navigating the continual, daily threat of extinction. And at the very tail end of that unimaginably vast timeline is you, with a lifespan of roughly 80 years. When you contrast the billions of years of cosmic evolution with your own microscopic lifespan, the illusion of being able to do it all just shatters. You realize that your existence is an incredibly improbable, fleeting event. To handle this awesome reality, Greene suggests a really powerful mental shift. He says, we must think of our mortality as a kind of continual deadline. This helps us stop fooling ourselves with endless distractions and the comforting, cozy illusion that we always have more time. By using the ultimate deadline of our mortality, the fact that this day, this specific project, or this conversation could literally be our last, we immediately clarify our daily actions. All the petty squabbles just fade away, and we can commit completely to what we actually choose to do in the present moment. But of course, modern society fights aggressively against this clarity. In his book, The Pathless Path, author Paul Millard points out that we've been tricked. We've been tricked into viewing time through a deeply flawed economic lens. We have equated time purely with money and productivity. Think about how we talk. We spend time, we invest time, or we wonder if a task was worth the cost. Millard argues that while this framework is great for coordinating a massive global economy, it completely strips away any sense of abundance in our personal lives. It makes us feel perpetually impoverished when it comes to our own time. There is a stark, fundamental difference in how we can approach this. When we view time as money, our lives are reduced to stressful calculations, costs, and anxious trade-offs. We get trapped in a narrative of constant output, where every single unmonetized hour feels like a massive loss. But when we shift to viewing time as life, we recognize that while our time is finite, the experience of it can be deeply abundant and precious. Time isn't just a currency you trade to an employer, it is the very fabric of your existence. Making this shift is incredibly difficult, though, because our brains are actually hardwired to deceive us about time. In the book Thinking Fast and Slow, Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman explains a cognitive error called duration neglect. Kahneman's research reveals that our minds are fundamentally terrible at processing the flow of time. We intensely overvalue transitions like, getting a promotion or buying a house, and we completely neglect the actual duration of the experience itself. This glitch causes us to frantically chase future milestones while totally ignoring the present moment where our lives are actually unfolding. So if life is this incredibly short and our minds naturally distort how we perceive time, how do we practically reclaim our days? How do we step off that hedonic treadmill without falling right back into the endless productivity trap? Well, there's a brilliant answer to this. And to find it, we turn to one of the greatest management thinkers in history, Peter Drucker, and his classic book, The Effective Executive. Drucker realized that true effectiveness is entirely different from the frantic busyness we see everywhere today. He wrote, "Effective executives do not start with their tasks, they start with their time." Now, this is a monumental shift in strategy. Instead of writing a massive to-do list and trying to figure out how to mathematically cram it all into a 24-hour day, it helps to start by acknowledging the hard constraints of time itself. Effectiveness requires a ruthless, completely honest audit of where your life force is actually going. Drucker proposes a profound 3-step diagnostic to achieve this. Step 1, record your time. You can't manage what you don't measure, right? Find out exactly where your hours are leaking away and do it without judging yourself. Step 2, manage your time. Violently prune away unproductive demands. And step 3, consolidate your time. Take whatever discretionary time you have left and group it into large, continuous blocks of deep focus. Don't let it be squandered in useless little driblets. Now, step 2, managing and pruning, is where most people really struggle because it requires immense courage. To actually prune the excess from your life, you need to look at your daily obligations and ask yourself one brutal, uncompromising question. What would happen if this were not done at all? Seriously, look at everything on your calendar, all the recurring meetings, the favors, the mindless doom scrolling, and genuinely ask, what is the actual, tangible consequence if I just stop doing this entirely? And here is the hard truth. If the honest answer to that question is nothing would happen, you really should consider eliminating that task immediately. Identify these purely wasteful activities, ignore the fear of missing out, and just cease those low-value tasks. Remember that timeline of human existence we looked at earlier? You are protecting a rapidly depleting bank of roughly 4,000 weeks. We literally do not have the time to waste on things that yield absolutely zero meaning. Eliminating these tasks frees you, but beware of what Paul Millard calls the optionality trap. We often think that keeping all our options open is the ultimate form of freedom, but endlessly holding out for new tasks, new invites, or theoretically better opportunities, that just keeps you trapped in a state of suspended anxiety. True freedom comes from intentional space. It comes from having the courage to close doors, to say a hard no, and to actually leave room in your schedule for a little more life. When you finally carve out this intentional space, something almost magical happens to your perception of time. As Robert Greene beautifully puts it, when we turn away from our work, the pleasures and distractions we pursue have all the more meaning and intensity knowing their evanescence. When you willingly embrace the shortness of life and quiet all that external noise, the few things you do choose to focus on, a deep conversation with a friend, a quiet walk, a creative project, they take on an incredible, transcendent intensity. The grand illusion of our era, fueled by endless technology and a culture of hyper-productivity, is that you must do it all. You are constantly told you need to maximize every single second and experience everything the world has to offer. But the reality is far more liberating. You don't have to fit everything into your life. You simply need to decide what actually deserves a place in your finite timeline.
So, I leave you with this final thought to carry with you as you look at your calendar tomorrow. If you truly internalize the fact that your life is a brief, miraculous flicker in the cosmos, if you knew for absolute certain that you couldn't do everything in life, what would you absolutely refuse to miss?